What's up, everyone? Welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast that takes a trip down Philly sports memory lane. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery, and I'm a little bit fired up and annoyed right now. And I say that because as I was getting ready for this, the kids were getting settled. Had to make sure they were out of the shower, so things weren't going to sound chaotic like the one day when I was recording here. But I'm looking, and there's just so much hate, and it's great that today is our Sixers preview. But I just don't get the hate for Joel Embiid. And apparently, and I don't know the full story because I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, but apparently the GM of Denver was speaking about something about this team's, I guess, struggle coming down the back half of the schedule. And he had made the comment about all the pressure and whatnot that there was on Jokic because of all the MVP talk. And obviously, somebody goes and asks Joel Embiid about it. And obviously, Joe gave what he thought. I mean, he had already said at this point, he was like, I don't care. I just want to win a championship. I'm not concerned about the MVP talk. And I really do believe that he said that. I don't know if he actually believed it or not, but he just kind of went out and just dominated and just said, fuck it. If you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to make you look like an idiot. But anyway, so they asked him about it. He basically said, he's like, oh, it's a distraction. But where was all that talk the past couple years when everybody, 2 years ago, everybody was asking him, oh, how do you feel about getting snubbed? How do you feel about this? And then last year, how do you feel about getting snubbed? The first half of this year, are you making it your point to win the MVP and all this? And of course, he gets hate for that. There's like people going around saying, wow, Joel Embiid is crying, this and that. And really, he's answering a question. And I find it, I get frustrated at this in my personal life, my work life. And without going into details, it's like I hate when people ask questions that they don't want to hear the answer to. And I mean, he gave the answer you should be giving. There was no talk about that. And it's ridiculous, but to spin that around and make it like he's crying over this, that, and the other, he didn't cry one bit about not being snubbed or whatever for the MVP the past 2 years or whatever. Us as fans did, absolutely. I think the media, especially the local Philadelphia media, made a big deal about it, but he didn't. So to say that, and I'm pretty sure it probably was a Boston fan, but anyway, I digress and didn't mean to go off on a rant to start the show, but that's what I was seeing before I came on Twitter, and Twitter can be a very toxic place sometimes, so got to watch yourself there. But we are in the middle of playoff season, and tomorrow night is the final playing games. Both games for the Eastern and Western Conference. The teams are playing for that final 8th spot. Basically, the right to get booted in the first round, I guess, because I don't really necessarily see either team necessarily coming out and beating the top seed. But with that being said, this has been, and we've been talking about this all year, this season for the Sixers is basically championship or bust. And they came into the season with that, and we knew that if you go back to our season preview, we wanted them to stay healthy. We knew that it was going to take them some time to gel. And the beginning of the season showed that. They got off to sort of a slow start. Joe stayed healthy. He didn't miss too many games early in the season, or he missed a few games early in the season. So did Harden, but you'd want them to miss those games early in the season. But then once they came back and they started getting into the groove, going into the flow, and I didn't realize this until I saw a stat the other day. Since December 5th, they're the best team in the NBA as far as wins and losses. And some of the analytical nerd type stuff, they're at the top too. So, yeah, they got off to a slow start, but they kind of dug themselves a hole. Now, Boston and Milwaukee were not that far behind them as far as being one of the better teams. But, and we know Joe just went out and just crushed it this season. And to me, going back to the whole MVP talk, there is just no question about it. He's the MVP. So with the playoffs starting, they did grab that 3 seed and would have liked for them. I don't know. I mean, we've been talking about it. If you follow the other podcasts they do, This Day in Philly Sports History, we've been talking about where they were in the standings and if they could move up. And they had a shot to maybe get up to 1, 2, or 1 or even 2. There's a chance at some point they could drop down to 4. But unless they were going to overtake Milwaukee for the 1 seed, we were going to be in a very, very similar predicament anyway. And we'll get into that later. So anyway, we got the 3rd seed. We did luck out with the draw that we get the Nets this year. And the Nets now absolutely are not the same team the Nets were at the beginning of this season. You had all the stuff with KD, our old pal Ben Simmons. Sixers this season did beat the Nets all 4 times. Take with that what you want. I mean, there were different teams. All 4 times they played, it was different teams. So they get underway Saturday at 1 o'clock. And what stinks is I'm going on a golf trip this weekend up into the mountains. And we're playing golf. And obviously we're golfing probably like 10:30, I think, is our tee time on Saturday morning, which is going to run in at some point to that Sixers game. And I mean, it is what it is. It's 2023. We all have phones. We can get the game or whatever that way. But the truth of the matter is nobody outside of Philadelphia, I think, is interested in watching this game. I mean, Nets fans maybe, if they even have fans. Nobody else in the NBA cares. That's why they put us at the first game. So before we get into the preview of the series, let's talk a little bit, because this is what I like to do, and we do take the trip down Philly sports memory lane. Talk about a little of the history between the Nets and the Sixers, because there is a pretty solid history. Obviously, they're in the same conference, they're in the same division. However, which it's funny, division doesn't necessarily mean that much in the NBA anymore. I feel like going back even to December, we're watching the conference standings. I mean, yeah, it'd be great to win the division, which likely means you're going to get a 1 or a 2 seed, but for the most part, it's all about where you place in the conference. But anyway, so the biggest and probably most famous tie between the Nets and the Sixers history is the whole Dr. J angle. The Nets were an ABA team. Dr. J was their star. If you do follow This Day in Philly Sports History, we talked a couple times about the Sixers Nets and their history with that. But Dr. J, basically the Sixers ended up paying, I forget the exact story, and I apologize. I should have done more of the research. I thought I'd remember. But somehow they bought out Dr. J's contract, gave him a contract, and somehow help the Nets basically get out of debt, I think it was, or the gist of that is correct. My facts might be slightly off, but whatever it is, the Sixers basically kept the Nets organization from going under, and basically there would be no Nets if it wasn't for that Sixers trade with Dr. J. So thank you, New Jersey Nets, for that. Obviously, they're the Brooklyn Nets now. They have met 4 times in the playoffs. This will be the 4th time they meet in the playoffs. 1979, the Sixers won 2-0. That's what it was, a best-of-3 series to start. We talked about this game a few weeks ago, where they actually played a doubleheader that season, the Sixers and the Nets. And what happened? Quick summary was the Nets protested a technical foul call where the Sixers had too many free throws. It was upheld and played at a later date. Well, the later date was the next time they played each other on whatever court that was, and I think it was in Philly. And between the original game and the replay of the protest game, where they took it from that technical foul call on, the Sixers and Nets made a trade. And basically, there were players who started the game for the Sixers, finished with the Nets, and vice versa. Eric Money gets credited for scoring for both teams in the same game. He was more of a star for the Nets. He had 20-some points in the first part of that game, and then had like four points for the Sixers. But that was all in the same season, 1979. just to add a little insult to injury. The Nets did get their revenge 6 years later in 1984. They knocked out the defending champs in the first round, 3-2, and this was to me, it symbolized the beginning of the end for that Sixers team. And they had been good since Dr. J came in I think it was 76, or 76, 77, somewhere in there. But, I mean, they were a perennial Eastern Conference power, winning the championship, and then sort of fell off. This was Charles Barkley's rookie year. And, I mean, they were obviously a playoff team, but they just weren't the championship caliber team they were before. And then the last time they played in the playoffs was 4 years ago, back in 2019 in the first round. This was the year that the Sixers, I believe they were the 5 seed, so they ended up playing Toronto, and that was the year Kawhi Leonard hit the shot that had the 4 or 5 bounces and went in. But that year, the Sixers beat the Nets 4-1 in the first round. So that leads us now to this year. And while that in 2019, that they were closer in the standings and the Nets were a little bit better of a team, I kind of foresee some of the same thing. And to be honest, I just don't see how the Nets have a shot in this series at all. And, I mean, would not surprise me if the Sixers sweep. Maybe the Nets catch them napping when they go back up to Brooklyn and steal one. I just don't see it happening. I mean, if this is a 4-0 series, there's just no way they match up. I mean, it's just. I mean, this is a playoff preview for the Sixers. Yes, I know. And to me, the preview is there's no way the Sixers are losing this series. I mean, I could be wrong. And I will come back on here if the Sixers lose this series, and I don't even know, I'll shave my head. And now that it's going out there, I'm going to have to shave my head. But if the Sixers lose this series let me throw this caveat in there, without a devastating injury, because there was the time that our Sixers beat the Bulls, who were the 1 seed. We won as the 8 seed. But that was because Derrick Rose. Barring any injury, and I'll leave it at this, if there's an injury to Embiid or Harden, the bet's off. But other than that, there's no way. And even then, I still think that the Sixers can beat them out of the first round. But I don't. The question is not necessarily for me, can the Nets win a game? Or not can they win the series, can they win a game? And if you go on DraftKings, and I know we talk some sports betting here, I really like this bet. It's a little juicy. I think I got it at -150, but you can do the over-under on games in the series. So I bet the Sixers -2.5 games, which basically means I'm down 3-0 already for the most part. So I need, or 2.5 games to 1, I should say. So I need the Sixers to win in 4 or 5 games in order to win the bet. I like it. I threw a little bit more than what I normally throw down on that because that's how confident I am. But if you're looking for a way so you don't have to pay the -900 that the Sixers are to win the series, I'm sure the spreads are going to be pretty high in this game too. Maybe you can live bet some of the games if the Nets get out to a fast start, which I don't see because the Sixers typically are the ones that get out to fast starts and then blow the leads. But that's where we stand. I mean, to be completely honest, that is the playoff preview for that. The Nets, can they win a game? One thing I think, looking at this Nets team, though, that still kind of pisses me off, their best player right now would look great on the Sixers. If you remember a few years ago, they drafted Mikal Bridges, the Philadelphia native, Villanova product. And I was thrilled at this. I love this pick. I'm not the biggest Villanova fan, but I definitely am a fan of this. And they ended up trading him for the rights to Zaire Smith, who, last I had heard, is out of the league. Now, maybe this impacts Tyrese Maxey and whether they draft him and his development and everything like that. But could you imagine if Mikal Bridges was on this team? Just throwing that out there. But again, we also had somebody in the other connection of this whole Nets Sixers series, the whole Ben Simmons things. Obviously, he's not playing, and I don't know. I don't know if this is the time or the place to get into it. But if you listen to the last episode when I had Mary Beth Freeman on, we talked a lot, or not a lot, but we talked somewhat about the whole mental health and the impact that that has, and how teams really need to start looking at that. And I kind of question at this point if the Sixers had something like that in place. Maybe they did. Maybe it was Ben Simmons because of the stigma. And to be honest, this is my PSA that we need to change the stigma on mental health and get the sports psychology and sports psychologists in there. But I just wonder if this had been caught from Ben Simmons earlier, how his career may have been different. And I'm not even saying with the Sixers. Maybe they still traded. Maybe him and Joe just don't get along. Whatever it could be. But I just wonder if that is sort of what is something that would have changed the way everything gone. But I mean, to be like I said, to be completely honest, that's all I have on the Nets series. They're going to win. It's just a matter of, can the Nets win a game? Do I win my bet? And then we kind of go from there. But going back a little bit, or not necessarily going back, but looking forward, but going back to something I said earlier, coming into this season, we've been trusting the process since 2013. And with all that being said, this was make or break for the Sixers. And they, again, they were one of the top teams in the NBA. And when they're rolling, they can't be beat. I'm sorry, and I will say that. Now, that is sort of the issue because you got a team like Boston who, obviously, if everybody's rolling, they're unbeatable. You have Milwaukee. If everybody's rolling, they're unbeatable. Our issue is we don't necessarily have, like, if Joe's off, we're done. Luckily this year, too much, he hasn't been off. I mean, even to a certain point, if Tyrese or James are off, I've seen a lot of games where we struggle a little bit. So everybody's got to come out and play their best game, which to me puts the focus squarely on Glenn Doc Rivers. And it's no secret that I've been hard on him this entire season. I even said at the beginning of the season during the Sixers preview we did on this podcast that the season is going to come down to him and what he's able to do. And I still think he's living off of that super team he had in Boston, which he should have probably won one. He shouldn't have blown leads when he was with the Clippers. But here we are. And there's nothing we can do about that. But it's going to come down to the bench. And honestly, how he rotates it. I mean, obviously it looks like B-Ball Paul is probably going to be Joe's backup. And he always seems to step up around this time of year. But then is Niang going to be the guy? Because Niang, when he's on, he's great. And when he's not, he's a liability. You have McDaniels, Danielle House, Shake Milton. Like, who's going to be the one that steps up? And I think it all comes down, it's squarely on Doc. And I saw a thing on Twitter, or I guess it was TikTok, and it was one of the memes with the one guy dancing and whatever. And it said, me realizing that this year the Sixers are either going to win the NBA championship or Doc Rivers is going to get fired. And I really think it's an all or nothing thing. And I think hopefully we see Doc come out with sort of that dog mentality, that playing for his or coaching for his life. I think for the most part, you have guys that are hungry. You have Embiid, who just wants to prove that he not only is the best player in the world, I think he legitimately wants to win. Harden, we don't know what's going to happen with him. Maxey, who's trying to make a name for himself. Tobias, who it's rightfully so, but due to his contract, gets shit all the time. PJ Tucker, who honestly is a bust for the most part, I would say, I would like to see him. I feel like this is what they picked him up for and signed him. So I want to see something out of PJ Tucker. And I think the reasons they're going to make a run is Embiid is going to be like, he's going to be focused. He's going to be locked in, and barring some freak injury, I think he's conditioned himself enough that he's not going to get injured. And he's learned how to land. That was a problem early in his career, especially going into the playoffs. Like, barring something freakish, he's going to be focused. I think PJ Tucker, he's old, but I think he's a savvy vet who is going to be able to turn it on and go back and be like, all right, I'm PJ fucking Tucker. Let's go. Tobias, I think Tobias is one of those guys, when he gets hot, he can be on, and I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. Tyrese Maxey, I mean, I think he's sort of the cog that makes this team go. I think if he's hitting on all cylinders, and then Harden and Joe, I think that allows PJ Tucker to maybe have an off game, Tobias Harris to have an off game. So Maxey needs it, and I think he's young. I think these guys are going to come to it. And then it comes down to Doc and how he uses his bench. Like, is he stubborn? If Niang is a liability, is he going to pull him out and put Milton or Melton in? I mean, he's going to have to. And that has been his thing. And again, I think we have, I keep going back to like the 2017 Eagles and that underdog mentality, but I think everybody's been writing them off. I hear all the time, it's Boston or Milwaukee. And I think the Sixers have just been steadily playing, putting their heads down, doing what they need to do. And I really, truly believe and think that they're like, let's do these motherfuckers. Like, we're ready. And I think you're going to see a team that is hungry, and I think they're going to be focused on getting past Boston. And that we'll get into that in a minute, but I do think that beating them the other day, even though it was not a full Boston team, but Boston has some injuries. They've been known to. So either way, I think that gave them confidence going into it. Now, why do they not make a run? I mean, take your pick. Embiid gets hurt. Harden gets old. Tobias plays like a guy who can't handle the pressure. Tucker gets old. Maxey just can't hit a shot. The bench is terrible. Doc, there's so many ways. There's more reasons of why they can't make a run, but I just feel like I said, take your pick. Obviously an injury, but I just feel there's something different about this team. I feel like when they've had to turn it on, I'm looking at that game, that nationally televised game against Denver, when Joe said, "Here's your MVP race." I'm thinking about the game against Milwaukee when they came back. Like, when they've had to play hard and well, they have. And I think it stinks and it sucks and it's frustrating that they have to play Boston in the second round, but I think that game gave them confidence. Now, what are the chances then? I don't know if the Hawks can beat the Celtics or not. I doubt it, but you can always maybe somebody gets hot. Like, you never know. So for all intents and purposes, it's like maybe Trae Young gets, and which we've seen him do to the Sixers. Part of that was Ben Simmons, but we've seen Trae Young get hot in the playoffs and go on a run. So it's not unheard of. I don't think it's very likely. So pretty much we're looking at Sixers Celtics, in the second round. We know all the history of the Sixers versus the Celtics. I think that would be a great, great series. It scares me, but I mean, listen, you're going to have to beat them eventually at some point anyway. So why not just, exercise all those demons at once. Exercise the Celtics, exercise the second round of the playoffs, and then see what happens. You're in uncharted territory. I don't think either the Knicks or the Cavs have a shot at beating the Bucks. And truthfully, I'm interested in seeing how that series goes, because the Knicks have dominated the Cavs this year, but the Knicks have not beaten Milwaukee, where Cleveland is 2-2 against them. So it should be an interesting playoffs. And again, the Sixers beat the Nets. I mean, I think that, to me, honestly, goes without saying. I mean, I'm going so far as barring an injury to one of the big two guys. There's no way. To me, it's a matter of whether the Nets can win a game or not. After that, it gets dicey. We'll come back with a little Sixers Celtics because there's a whole plethora of Sixers Celtics playoff history to get into. It'll be a fun week. I think, like in the NFL, it's the Eagles, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys. You have the Penguins in hockey, but here we are in Mets in baseball, and even the Braves now to a certain point. But in basketball, it's the Celtics, and that's, I mean, to be honest, nothing's going to be more fun than that heading into the middle of summer or middle of May. So we'll see what happens. But for now, I'm going on record to say I'll give the Nets one game, 4-1. Don't be surprised if it's a sweep. Now next year, I don't know. There's still a lot of questions. I'm not one to get ready to give up on the process. Because to me, as a lifelong Sixers fan and somebody who is dying for this team to win a championship, like 2001 was my jam. I'm not ready to give up on the process because I think the Sixers set sort of the standard on how to get out of bad contracts, to get out of NBA purgatory, where you're 7-8 seed, play-in tournament, not quite getting a good lottery pick. So I think a lot's going to have to play out from how this happens. We got Joe under contract. We got Maxey. Can they get out of Tobias's contract and open up some flexibility? Does Harden want to come back? Is he dead set on leaving? I mean, I think from a salary standpoint, I believe with where he is, again, the NBA is different than any of the other sports, but I think the Sixers can offer him a more money max contract than anybody else. So maybe he takes it and somehow they're able to get rid of Tobias and we go from there. So where do we go from here? I don't know, but I'm trusting the process. This is the do or die year. This kind of last year and this year were always on my calendar as these are the seasons we need to kind of circle for the process to really take effect. I don't know. Joe, we're going to see how good he is. Like Michael Jordan was good enough to carry a team through a playoff series. Maybe not to a championship, but a playoff series. LeBron James. Now, am I saying Joe is on LeBron James and Michael Jordan level? No. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying he is that dominant of a player that he could. Now the Celtics are going to be tough to beat, so I'm very excited to see that series. And yes, I know we've talked about this. This is New Philly. I know it's like I'm looking past the Nets, but yeah, I'm looking past the Nets. I mean, I can't come up with any way that the Nets don't get blown out in this series. I mean, absolute worst case, it's 4-2, and even if it's 4-2, something really, really wrong happened. So, yes, I'm looking forward, but we'll be back hopefully in a couple weeks. The Sixers get some rest, and we'll be looking at that Sixers-Celtics series. Who knows? Maybe Trae Young can get hot. I would not be opposed to that either because we got a little redemption and payback we got to give to those Atlanta Hawks anyway. But that is our Sixers preview for the first round. Again, it's the Nets. I mean, if it was any other team, I would have gone into player-by-player analysis, but I cannot see a way. Mikal Bridges is good. Don't get me wrong. Who else do they got? Spencer Dinwiddie? I mean, really? That's what we're going to say here? I mean, they screwed up their tank job, basically. They were right up there with the Sixers, and now all of a sudden they were just good at it. They won enough games that they couldn't fall out and get into the lottery. But let's go Sixers. It's going to be a fun playoff run. I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, I saw my Super Bowl. I saw my World Series. I could really give a shit, to be honest, about the Stanley Cup. It'd be cool to see. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But this is the one I want. This is my championship now. This is where my focus, my energy is. I want it. I'm going to will it into fruition. Joe's going to come out and play like Superman. Things are going to look good. Let's go. If you want more on more on each game daily, I'll get it out right. Make sure to tune in to This Day in Philly Sports History every day. Same place wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. This month, like, we started with a Black History Month spotlight. We did Women's History Month last month. This month, in honor of the NFL Draft, we're doing an Eagles draft pick spotlight. So just some fun things like that we like to do. For next month, or next week, for this podcast, Back to the Future, I'm working on something big for the NFL draft preview. I want to try to get a roundtable with a lot of the guys I have tickets with and just kind of see where we are with the Eagles, what we're going to do. Hopefully we have some updates on Jalen Hurts' contract situation. So stay tuned for that next week. Thank you for listening. This has been Back to the Future. I'm Jim Montgomery. Follow me on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter at Jimbo_Mont. Instagram at Philly Jimbo. If you can, look me up on Facebook if you want to see pictures of my kid that my wife tags me in all the time. Whatever works. Make sure you tell your friends, like and subscribe, because all of that little bit helps out the algorithm, and the better the algorithm, the more we're able to grow this. I have some things going into the summer I want to experiment with to try to get this bigger. I want to get more of an interview thing going. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, enemies, smoke signals. If you're in elementary school in the Upper Dublin School District, Fort Washington Elementary, be sure to tell your friends, to tell their dads to check me out. I'll probably see them at the pool anyway. But like I said, this is Jim Montgomery, Back to the Future. Go have yourselves a week. Go Sixers. And until next time, I will see you when I see you.